Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first Solutions webinar on city logistics. This is being held for 1 hour today until 4 p.m. Central European Time, and our presenter today will be Laetitia Dablanc she's the Director of Research at IFSTTAR, the French Institute for Science and Technology for Transport. And I'm your moderator, Kristen Tovas, consultant at Ruprecht Consult. Just a little overview of the agenda today. First, we'll do a welcome, quick webinar tips so that you as participants understand how to interact and to let us know when you have questions. We'll also talk about who is here today, and then the presentation by Laetitia. And then a question and discussion session at the end. Please let me know during the webinar if you have any trouble hearing us, if you're not seeing anything. Just feel free to raise your hand. So now I'll show you how to do that. Some tips. First of all, you will be automatically muted until you're called on after you raise your hand. So you don't have to worry about us hearing what you're doing. You're just muted, but when you do want to ask a spoken question, then you can raise your hand, and you see here the button on the navigation pane for you to raise your hand. And then the question function is just below, if you see the questions right here, and there you can type your question. And I will field those questions, and then I will stop Laetitia and ask her to answer this question at appropriate points throughout the webinar. We're also going to be having some polls today. So we'll ask all the participants to answer this poll. When it pops up, please just tick the answer that you feel is correct for you, and then we can show immediately the results of that poll. So moving on to who is here. As I already mentioned, my name is Kristen Tovas. I'll be the moderator. But most of the show today goes to Laetitia Dablanc, Director of Research at IFSTTAR. So without further ado, we'll just do a little overview of the Solutions project. We have the website right here, urbanmobilitysolutions.eu, if you'd like to learn more about solutions. And also, we have a YouTube channel, which this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to YouTube so that it's made available for you. And now I'll give the presentation over to Laetitia so that she can start the webinar on city logistics.
Thanks very much, Kristen. Can I send the first poll?
Yes, we can send out that first poll. I'll still make you the presenter right now. And then we have one quick question, which we will pose to participants.
Okay.
So we will launch the poll right now. So take it away, Laetitia.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you very much. Please, just to launch the conversation, and it's just to raise some issues before my presentation, but I was just interested in your answer to the following. How many more warehouses in large North American cities such as Atlanta or Los Angeles today compared with, let's say, 10 years ago? So please select one of the following. These are very different answers. So is it 3 times today as 10 years ago? 3 times more warehouses in the metropolitan area of many US cities? Is it 10% more? Or is it about the same or less because of optimization of supply chain? So the number of logistics facilities and warehouses. Okay, thank you very much for your participation. And then I will go directly to my presentation after we see the poll results.
Okay, so we're still getting some responses in right now.
Okay.
So if you haven't put your answer in on this yet, then please do so. We'll just close this poll in the next, let's say, 15 seconds. Okay. So it seems like most people have voted at this point, so we'll close the poll. And now we can share the results. So here we go.
Oh, that's very distributed. Very interesting. Okay, so I will mention that during my presentation, but the number of logistics facilities in your metropolitan area is actually a very, very key feature. And it will determine the mobility of goods movement within your city and your metropolitan area. You will see how during my presentation. And the answer, just the answer, it was 3 times as many. So the majority of you had the right answer, which is very interesting. And we will see why it is so important. Okay, so I will start with my PowerPoint presentation. I hope you all see it very clearly. I hope you can hear me very clearly too. I will start with one of the few comprehensive statistics we have in terms of freight mobility in large metropolitan areas. So this is for the Paris region. This is where I come from, so no wonder. But it's also because we have a great new urban freight survey for that area, the metropolitan area of Paris in France. 8,000 deliveries every day in this urban region. Okay, and that means about 0.70 deliveries per week per employment job. Or if I say that differently, it's about 0.40 delivery per week per inhabitant, per capita. Okay, so it's quite an interesting ratio. It didn't exist just a few years ago, and this now means that we have interesting data for city planners, for urban mobility or urban planners, practitioners in large metropolitan areas around the world. It means we can start modeling freight mobility because we have the basic data. So one of the basic data is this: 0.4 deliveries per week per inhabitant. So just imagine the number of inhabitants you have in your own city and just make the simple calculation. Of course, this relates to Paris, a European city, and the other cities in the world have probably a different ratio. But at least we have one, and we have a few others from other cities. And I hope many more cities will jump in this urban freight data collection effort, and we will be able to compare indicators such as this one. Okay. Another interesting finding from the Paris Urban Freight Survey is that over these 800,000 deliveries every day that we have in Paris, 24% are for small retail, small stores. 18% are offices. Think about banks, administrations, anything that we don't relate to goods movement usually. That these activities do generate a lot of freight movement, just simple offices, office jobs. And of course, industry and wholesale activities are heavy generators of freight. Another interesting data is the following: only 2% of these 800,000 deliveries a day are what I will call in the following, one of the following parts of my presentations, innovative city logistics activities. This is an interesting number you have to remember before I go on with my presentation. 2% of the 800,000 deliveries a day in Paris are innovative city logistics. This is growing, but this is still a very minor part of the deliveries in Paris. All right. Let's go to other parts of the world. Let's leave Europe for a second And what I entitled this slide, Different Cities, Different Needs in terms of urban freight and city logistics. Think about Chicago. Chicago is the main freight rail hub for North America. They have a lot of issues with freight trains conflicts with the rest of traffic. It's also a main economic asset, rail. Los Angeles has issues with air pollution. A lot of it is related to truck traffic, and a lot of it is related to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. Shanghai is the largest cargo port in the world, and logistics is a major economic activity. What planners there think about when they think about city logistics. Economic asset, very important feature for economic development. Tokyo relates urban freight to truck congestion because of the traffic going to and from the ports, which are inside the Tokyo area, very central. Mexico City has a different issue. 40% of the working population in Mexico work in either very small micro companies, they work in micro companies, and of that total number of people working in very small companies, half of them are home-based or street-based, small workshops or just working in the street. This means that they have very specific urban freight supply chains to get the goods they're going to process, they're going to work on, or they're going to sell. Another example of a very different kind of city logistics you can find in a city is the famous organization of the Dabbawalas in Mumbai, India, where hot meals are being distributed through quite a sophisticated network of delivery people. They are specialized in the delivery every day at lunchtime of hot lunch boxes. And this is a very broad-wide service that is provided to the Mumbai working population, very specific to Mumbai. My last example is back to the US, New York City. New York City now is filled with home deliveries. It's true for many cities in the world. New York City probably is the extreme. Every day in New York, you have about 1.4 million deliveries to businesses, but you already have nearly 1 million deliveries to people directly, and most of it through home deliveries. Very different supply chains today because of that change in the consumers' behaviors. So urban freight, I would call it a highly performing activity. Think about urban freight as serving customers, businesses, and people despite difficult urban conditions, very fast changing urban economy. The urban economy today is not the one existing 20 years ago. So you have much less independent retail activities. I will give you the example of Istanbul in a minute. You have lots more demand for express and courier deliveries. You have a decrease in each store's storage area. Then each store demands much more frequent deliveries than before because you don't have the goods in the backyard of your stores anymore. So you ask the delivery system to provide the goods when the consumers want them. And of course, you have the development of e-commerce and home deliveries. All this has been answered by even though it's difficult because of traffic, because of restrictions to our mobility of vehicles, etc. So there's a sort of very efficient system behind the goods we get when we live in cities, right? So never forget that. There's a sort of efficiency. But, excuse me. Yeah, but, and I want to go directly to this slide now, this comes at a cost. So the very high efficiency of these urban deliveries comes at an environmental and a social cost. I'm just giving here the example of air quality, emissions of pollutants. And very large, there are very important environmental issues in cities because of urban deliveries. And I'm giving here the example of French cities. Freight, and remember that broad share of responsibility for emissions. In French cities, freight is responsible for a quarter of transport-related CO2. This is greenhouse gas. Freight is responsible for a third of transport-related NOx. This is local pollutant that is very impacting for people's health. And freight is responsible for half of particulate matters when they are related to transport. So a quarter, a third, and a half of air emissions come from freight and not from passenger transport. So never forget that this very efficient urban freight system comes with quite a heavy environmental cost, especially for the health of people living in cities and for the CO2 involved in the life of a big metropolitan area. Let me just go back to a slide.
Laetitia?
Yes, Kristen? Yes?
One moment. I think I'm getting some questions from people about the sound not being clear.
Okay.
Make sure I can hear you fine. I think there were maybe some moments where you broke up a little bit. The internet connection may not have been good.
I can do that by phone. It will be better.
Well, let's see. We can continue. I just wanted to let you know. I've posed a question to the whole group if the sound has cleared up. If anybody would like to let me know if it sounds okay, then we can continue. But if there's no sound, as one person mentioned, then we should try and solve this. It was breaking up just for a bit, but it is generally fine. I suggest we go on. Okay, we'll take your suggestion. Thank you, Andrea. So
I keep the computer mic?
I think this is fine. You can continue as this, yeah, as you are with the computer. I think it's fine now.
Okay, I'm really sorry about that. I hope I'll try to be maybe a little bit slower. So I wanted to show you interesting set of photos from Istanbul that I took just a few months ago, showing you two very different grocery areas, grocery points. You see an independent store on the left, and you see a chain of supermarkets on the right. This is from the same neighborhood. The supermarket is much more recent. On the left, the small independent store for grocery is more of a traditional way of getting groceries. But think about the impact on urban freight mobility that these two very different stores have. When you go to a supermarket, when the system goes into more supermarkets than independent,
It seems the sound has cut out again. We have lost you, Laetitia. Hello? Are you still there? We still can't hear you.
happen. And that means you will understand the relevant to your city, and economic and the consumer behaviors in order to understand your supply chains. That's what I wanted to tell you. Another interesting issue in city logistics, urban freight, and policies is the emergence of what I call in this presentation actual innovative city logistics. So innovative city logistics is any service provision contributing to an optimized management of the movement of goods in cities and providing innovative responses to customer demands. You remember that I told you before that only 2% of deliveries in Paris were innovative. This is what I'm talking about. Innovation means new concepts, new players, new vehicles. New players, I just give you on the slide a few names. Just don't look at the specific names, but I gave you these. You can go back to these and look at what they're actually doing. What is interesting is to look at the new concepts. People implement, new companies, new startups implement automated lockers to get your goods without having to have them delivered at home. Providers open urban consolidation centers. New companies for deliveries work with electrically assisted cargo cycles. There are alternative modes of transport such as urban freight, city barges, etc. The whole city logistics scene is represented by this set of photographs. You can see very innovative ways of delivering in cities. A lot of them are taken from European cities and a few of them from the US. Remember, 2% of all the delivery in Paris are actually represented by these photos. But these photos represent city logistics in, let's say, 90% of the media coverage of urban freight. So 2% is the reality, and 90% is the objective of many, many cities. They want a much cleaner urban freight city logistics environment. So there's a lot of progress towards the 90%, but we're still today at 2, 3, 4, 5%, depending on the cities.
Laetitia, one quick
Yes?
question. You had broken up just a little bit there when you were talking about Istanbul. So I have a question that says what we really missed during the break is the change in calls at shops or supermarkets in Istanbul. So could you please just state that again and maybe summarize about that slide, the main point?
Right, of course, it's an important point. In all of your cities, there is a move from independent grocery stores to retail chains. And this is happening at a different speed, but in all large metropolitan areas in the world. And this has a huge impact on freight mobility and city logistics. You don't see that impact unless you think about it and unless you observe or you collect data. But the main impacts are, for example, consolidation of deliveries. There will be less deliveries every day to a supermarket store than to an independent store, much less. But it will be done with much bigger trucks and at early hours in the morning. So your city, in terms of urban freight, is very different if you have supermarket chains or if you have independent stores. And if you have both, well, it's called a transition. So I just wanted to point out the difference in the impact on freight mobility when you have a different kind of consumer or shopping behavior in cities.
Okay.
Now I want to go to another kind of issue, which is back to the warehouses. We talked in the beginning with a poll. Remember, I asked you if there were many more warehouses in big cities today than before, and I said yes. There actually is about 3 times more warehouses in cities like Paris, Los Angeles, Atlanta. So it's not only the US, it's a lot of cities in the world. I'd love to have data for many more cities, and it's one of our projects. But for the moment, I have data for Europe and the US. Many more warehouses. It's very important as city planners that you understand that there's a new landscape in suburban areas of warehouses, freight facilities. See that picture on the bottom of the slide? These warehouses did not exist 10 years ago. What does that mean? For your road network, it means concentration of truck traffic to and from these warehouses. And for the region, it means a totally different truck mobility than before. Let me just give you the example of Amazon in Los Angeles. So this is the whole area, metropolitan area of Los Angeles. You see a shipment trip throughout the region. Okay, let's say a container arrives the port of Long Beach. You see the port of Long Beach on the screen. And then a truck will carry that container to one of the 3 Amazon distribution centers in the eastern part of Los Angeles, which is called the Inland Empire. And then someone living in the very dense residential area of LA, West LA, orders something from Amazon. So then the shipment will go back to the west of the region. So origin destination of the goods actually is very, very dependent on the location of the distribution centers, the warehouses, the fulfillment centers of the supply chains. For a city planner, for all the city planners in this region, it's about 80 different municipalities here. This is very important. So planners have to know the regional picture of truck mobility, not only what actually goes inside their city territory. Okay. Okay, now just a few words about, let's say, policies, strategies, practices, best practices in terms of city logistics and urban freight. Because before I just gave you a few of the issues, economic, environmental, spatial, planning issues of urban freight. Now let's go into more of a policy oriented presentation. I have selected a few urban freight and city logistics strategies that I think are quite interesting for mostly European cities, but also for probably the rest of the world. But this, you will tell me if this rings a bell for your city and if it's relevant, realistic for your own city. So let's start with what I call consultation, forums, certification, and training programs. It's quite an important area of policies in terms of city logistics for cities. What does that mean? It's not a regulation. You don't force freight companies to do something, but you suggest to consult them, to organize a freight forum, to provide information to them through information websites and portals. And you also organize training programs so that give incentives to the freight operators to change their behaviors. For example, to drive better, to be more silent when driving or when delivering, or to use cleaner vehicles, cleaner trucks, cleaner vans, cleaner motorbikes when they deliver into the city. So I'm just giving here 2 examples. The London Freight Plan, that's from 2007. It's one of the first comprehensive freight planning documents from a city that gives a lot of different strategies, but it's not compulsory. It is from a freight consultation with industry. And they also implemented the FORCE, Freight Operation Recognition System. The FORCE system gives medals, bronze, silver, and gold medals to the freight companies that want to get into the scheme. So if you get a gold medal, for example, as a very good urban freight operator, then maybe you will be more successful in bids for tender from big shippers, big retailers, or from the municipality to make the deliveries. The other example is here. It's the signature of the Charter for Sustainable Logistics in Paris. So I'm presenting this picture because this is the mayor of Paris. This used to be the mayor of Paris 2 years ago. He signed a logistics document with the industry. This is a representative of the industry, freight industry. So it was the first time that such a high-level person, the mayor, would sign a document regarding freight and city logistics. So this is very important for the industry because it means you take them for real and you try to consult them on urban freight strategies. Second strategy that I wanted to show you as an example of best practice is off-peak hour deliveries, or night deliveries or off-hour deliveries. There are several names for that kind of concept. It's quite simple. You try to have a certain percentage of the deliveries done early in the morning or late at night or during the night. It can raise issues of noise, but on the whole, it's very, very beneficial to a city because it does reduce the number of deliveries because shippers and logistics providers can consolidate much more their shipment. It reduces congestion and it reduces cost for the delivering industry. I'm giving a few examples here. Very famous Dutch program called Peak program. This is the best program for silent deliveries in the world. So they gave a lot of research and development efforts to developing equipment, trucks, and handling equipment that are much more silent. And they give a lot of training to the delivery drivers to be able to deliver at night without making noise. Here you have Carrefour, the second largest retailer in the world, providing urban deliveries very early in the morning in Paris today. So this reduces their cost and this reduces congestion for the city of Paris because you can fit in this big truck at 5 in the morning the equivalent of 10 medium trucks or vans that would be actually delivering the same supermarkets before the experimentation of peak hour deliveries. And the last photo is also quite interesting. It's a small pharmacy that has been delivered during the night without anyone present in the shop. They have a system of a buffer zone where just the delivery people can just leave the medicine, the goods, the cosmetics inside that buffer zone. So nobody gets into the store and nobody needs to be present during the delivery. So you can actually deliver anytime you want. The third strategy that seems very interesting and that is developing very fast is pickup points for home deliveries. Instead of delivering at home, actually, transport providers working for the e-commerce retailers will deliver in consolidated boxes, lockers. You can see the Amazon lockers here. You can see the DHL Packstation lockers in Frankfurt in Germany. You can see Buybox, another company providing these lockers. You also have another kind of pickup point, which is not an automated set of boxes. It's actually a small store. I think this is from France. Actually, a lot of French people today do not expect their home deliveries at home. They expect their deliveries in local stores. This brings people back into the local stores, and this makes this person very happy because people picking up their parcels from online shopping will also maybe buy a magazine from them. So they actually increase their revenue from that organization of local store pickup point. So you have the two models. But my point is, in any case, it does reduce the number of vans and trucks circulating in residential areas because they only need to serve a consolidated pickup point area where consumers will actually go, maybe by foot or by car, to get their parcels. Another type of strategy, innovative street designs. Okay, very briefly, it seems very simple, but it's actually not so frequent to see cities experimenting innovative street designs for loading and unloading goods. Here, it's a bus and lorry lane. So bus lanes are actually open to all kinds of different big vehicles. So, of course, mostly trucks and lorries in the bus lane. Very different experiment. This is in Paris. Paris has the contrary, but they still accept trucks in the bus lanes. This is a bus lane, protected, as you can see. But the trucks can only go there to deliver, to unload the goods, and they do that in a sort of very new type of loading zone. This one is actually not that good because it's, it's not very straight. But the point is this truck is protected from the use of private cars cannot get into the loading zone. And it's kind of a protection from the bus lane to the loading zone. And the bus can still actually go through the lane, even though the truck is here in the loading zone. A third example is quite interesting. This is Barcelona. Barcelona, here and here, you have two photos related to Barcelona. Barcelona is in Spain. Barcelona is very innovative in their use of the street space for delivery. The first example is that the multi-use lanes in Barcelona, and this is the electronic sign informing on the multi-use lane. You have very big boulevards that are used at night for parking, and I'm talking about the lanes closest to the sidewalk. Parking at night for cars. During peak hours, it's traffic, all kind of traffic, car traffic, bus traffic, truck traffic. But off-peak hour, which means in the morning after 10 o'clock or in the afternoon, it's only loading and loading. So the whole lane is reserved for loading and loading goods. It's quite an interesting share of the space of the street during the different times of the day. And another example here is Barcelona having a lot of big delivery spaces. You see it here on the right-hand side of the photo. It's completely reserved for deliveries. It's because of these triangle spaces that Barcelona has from their very specific urban design buildings. But the point is, Barcelona is providing, I think, 5,000 of these triangles for deliveries just in the area, in the densest area of the metropolitan area of Barcelona. Another interesting new strategy is promoting electric vans and cargo cycles in city centers. And you see my photos here. It's all taken recently from London, Berlin, or Paris, or Milan. These are new types of electrically assisted vehicles to deliver the last miles. In many other cities, such as Sao Paulo or Rio, this may not appear so innovative because you already have a lot of, China has a lot of electrically assisted cargo cycles today. But these European cities are rediscovering that. Of course, these vehicles have a very good environmental benefit in terms of air emissions. They are still quite difficult to integrate into regular roads and boulevards of these main cities. And in Paris, the solution has been to open the bicycle lanes to these new vehicles for delivery, for freight deliveries. But different cities have different ways of managing these cargo cycles. I will go quickly to another type of strategy that seems to me very interesting. It's called low emission zones. We already have about 200 of these low emission zones in the large cities in Europe. So what does that mean? That means that in certain areas of the city, you ban old trucks and vans. So if you're driving an old truck, which means a polluting truck, you cannot get into the low emission zone. What we have done recently is a research that is trying to assess the economic impact of low emission zones on the freight industry. And what we came up with in terms of results is quite interesting. A low emission zone reduces the number of companies that are delivering. So instead of having 12,000 freight companies, for example, in London, you only have 10,000 or 9,000, right? But the quality of the service is the same. So you have less companies. That means the companies are bigger. So there's a total change of the urban freight market just because you banned the very old trucks and vans. And I took the example of London. You could also take the example of Berlin or Gothenburg, many, or Rome, many cities in Europe now have that ban on very old trucks. You're not obliged to drive an electric trucks or vans, but you cannot drive a truck which is older than 8 years. This is a general standard. It has a very big impact on the market for urban freight deliveries. Very interesting. One of my last examples of strategies will be about new logistics buildings in urban areas. It's a very interesting new trend. It's new for Europe. It's not new for Japan. And this is a photo of an amazing logistics facility in a very busy neighborhood of Tokyo in Japan. So I hope you can see that it's a multi-story logistics building with 7 different floors. It's actually run by Prologis, which is the largest real estate developer in the world for logistics facilities. In Tokyo, they build multi-story facilities in the very center of the Tokyo metropolitan area. Very, very different from Europe and the US. But what is appearing now in Europe is new kinds of logistics buildings in the center of cities. So I'm giving a photo here of Marseille in the south of France. New freight facilities very close to the city center. And the very, very new project is here. It's called Chapelle International. It's a very big development project in the north of Paris, very close to the very urban core of Paris. The new logistics facilities is here. You cannot see it actually because it's underground. You have 2 levels of logistics. You have 2 levels of logistics facilities, and you will have, it's under construction right now. They got the building permits. But what is very interesting is that you will not see the logistics facilities. They will be the ground level and the first level underground. All the rest is retail, residential, all around the logistics facilities, offices, leisure entertainment. So it's a very innovative, big urban development project that incorporates logistics activities within a lot of other urban uses, such as residential and activity-based uses. Very interesting project in the north of Paris. The city of Paris has also done something quite interesting, and here you see a map. I think I show that for the first time, but I have the authorization to show that because this is for the future Paris zoning law, the new master plan for Paris, which will be implemented next year. You have an interesting map where you have 80 logistics facilities, logistics areas that will be reserved for logistics activities later. You cannot build anything else than logistics activities buildings in these 80 areas. So you can see different colors from different types of logistics facilities. But the main point here is that a city, in its own zoning ordinance and planning document, is actually making sure that logistics facilities will be able to stay within Paris and not go very, very far away in the suburban areas. Very briefly, a few other strategies that I think are interesting, much more complicated to implement, are the following. Experiments in non-road urban freight transport. Cities are trying to use more waterways, heavy rail, and light rail to actually get consolidated shipments into the city centers. You have 2 examples here. This is from Paris. This is a train that comes into the city center of Paris every day, and CNG, gas trucks actually make the final deliveries. But the train station is actually, the freight train station is actually right in the middle of Paris. The second photo on the right is a competitor of the first retailer. These are two retailing companies, part of the same group, the Casino group. But the competitor here is actually providing the same service, but with barges and not trains. So a barge comes twice a day in Paris, in the center of Paris, and all the containers are finally delivered by diesel trucks. So the two experiments are quite interesting. They're massive. Half of the deliveries of these shops, the stores in Paris, for these two retailers are actually provided by either trains and CNG trucks or barges and diesel trucks. They have very good environmental benefits. The problem is the cost. This is very expensive to implement. But it's interesting. Another example of interesting strategies, but are also very expensive to implement, is what we call urban consolidation centers. Urban consolidation centers are small terminals at the outskirts of city centers that actually want to group all the deliveries for the city center. There's a consolidation activity taking place within this small urban distribution center. And usually electric trucks or CNG trucks will do the last miles to deliver the city centers. This is an example of Vicenza in Italy. You see the type of trucks that actually do the last miles. You have a freight terminal just outside of the historic center where all the providers of shipments, freight goods, will stop, and just the final miles will be done with electric deliveries with one provider of deliveries. This is the example of Bristol in the UK, and this is another example of La Rochelle in France. All these experiments work well, and the environmental benefits are important. The only problem is the very expensive cost of setting up a terminal just outside the city centers and the cost of running these electric trucks and vans. Let me make my conclusion now, and then we will have as many questions and answers as you may want, and also the final poll that I wanted to ask you about. So very briefly, my conclusion about all these issues of city logistics and urban freight. So I think urban freight represents many jobs and an important economic feature of any city in the world. You cannot about urban freight, because urban freight is the invisible part of all the economic and public activities in a city. Second conclusion, you have innovative logistics services in cities. They are emerging. But remember my 2%. It's still a marginal share of the market. It's growing, but freight transport still generates many environmental impacts. So as city planners, never forget about the important share of trucks, vans, and freight motorbikes in your total environmental assessment related to transport and traffic. My third conclusion is that local decision makers, such as city planners and transportation planners, can implement simple and effective policies. So you have possibilities for strategies. You can do something. You can address the issues of urban freight, at least part of the issue. But my fourth conclusion is not as optimistic, or let's say in a way it's not as easy for local governments to act on urban freight, because freight and logistic issues also depend upon global supply chains, global economics, technical organizational innovations, and also long-term national or regional policies. So a city can do things but a city will not be able to do anything they want related to freight, because freight, and I think more so than passenger mobility, is very much dependent upon, let's say, the global world, because of these heavy supply chain demands that actually end up in cities. Let me finish with a few information about resources and websites. You know, you have some information there. And Kristen, I think we can launch the final poll.
Okay. So here we go.
Okay, so that's my final poll. I'd like to know, and I'm really interested in your answers, what is the #1 more relevant city logistics strategy for your city, at least as a start of a strategy? Maybe you're thinking about having freight strategy in the future. What would you start with? What will be your main focus in the beginning? So is this Kristen, I think some of them are missing. Do you know why?
Yeah, there's only a maximum of 5 answers.
Oh, okay.
And so there were some. We can discuss the other ones if you'd like to mention them right now.
The first one is actually my favorite. It's about training and consultation for the industry. So trying to discuss with the freight industry and setting up some training programs, let's say. But anyway, it's okay. Please pick up one strategy that you would like to promote if you were at the head of your city, or if you were the manager of the transport or planning department in your city, in your region. And I know you come from very different regions of the world.
Okay. We have almost 50% who have voted. While we wait for the rest to hopefully add in their votes, we have a question from Antonios, and he is asking, are there any available European funding mechanisms that can be used to fund innovative city logistics systems? So we can keep that question in mind for after we have the results.
Okay.
Almost 60% have voted. We'll just wait 5 more seconds. If you want to vote, vote now. Okay. Seems that most have voted, so we close the poll. Now we can share the results.
Of our deliveries, wow. Okay, great. Interesting, very interesting. And okay, I was negative about urban consolidation centers, so of course it may have influenced people, but I think, yes, the cost issue is an important issue. Okay, pickup points are really interesting, but as a city, I think many cities should try to promote them. For example, German cities are much more accommodating for these pickup points, whereas French cities don't want them because they think it's ugly. But then German cities are better optimized for home deliveries, right? So it's still an important strategy. And innovative street designs are very important, low emission zones too. So, okay, very interesting. Thank you very much. Yep. So do you want me to answer the question about funding or wait for more questions from participants?
Yeah, it would be great. We can start with that question. I will just make myself the presenter now so that I can show my screen. Okay. Good. So you should be able to see my PowerPoint now. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, everyone just please feel free to, at any time, to raise your hand or type in a question. In the meantime, we'll answer that first question that we had about the European funding opportunities. So let me bring up the question again. So
I don't see
Yeah, I can ask it again. Are there any available European funding mechanisms that can be used to fund innovative city logistics systems?
I don't think there is a permanent funding mechanism. Most cities get a lot of funding from the EU, but it's through calls, what they call calls. So your city has to be part of a consortium that wins a request for projects. If you're not part of a consortium that is successful in the call, and these calls are open every year. But if you're not successful, it's difficult to get funding from other sources. If you get into these consortiums, and if these consortiums are successful, it's a very, very good way of getting funding to start city logistics operation or to promote something with a company, a trucking company, or a retailer in your city. So it's actually raises a good question. I think we should have more permanent funding sources. This is more at the national level, I think. I know some European countries do have some permanent funding mechanisms, especially for clean vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And related to the lockers that you mentioned earlier, we have a question from Andrea Rosa asking, are there lockers shared by different couriers anywhere, for instance, owned by the municipality?
It's neither owned by the municipality or shared. The lockers, to my knowledge, and I know there has been pilot tests to have them more collective, but to my knowledge, these lockers are for one retailer only or for one transport provider only. So there are different business models, but in many cases you don't share them with competitors.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to raise them right now. You can also raise your hand and then we can give you the microphone. I have one more written question that came in, also from Andrea Rosa. How long does a consultation require to get results? For instance, how long did it take for London to get to the freight plan? My own experience is that cities I know have very limited understanding of freight distribution.
It can take a while. I know before launching the low emission zone in London, it took them 5-6 years of discussion before reaching an agreement with the industry. Same with the congestion charging scheme, you know, which is different from the low emission zone in London. It took 5-6 years of discussion. That's the time it takes, especially when a city is just starting to discuss with the freight industry. It's very difficult at the beginning. But for example, Paris has been, the first time they signed a charter was in 2006. It took them 5 years to set up the charter. The second time they signed a charter, it took them only 2 years. So the more you progress with the industry, the easier it becomes to reach compromises and agreements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have one more question that just came in. Oh, two. Okay, everyone's getting their questions in. So we'll take them in order. The first one is, what is the most efficient software tool for the estimation of OD and the assignment of trips to the network?
I can't tell you, and I don't think there are so many of them on the market that, well, you have a lot of optimizing tools for delivery tools, but you have very few of them that integrate traffic data, incidents data, and I know some of them are trying to do that. So I would say these are the most interesting ones, but they're mostly being tested. I don't think there are some of them on the markets already. But again, I wouldn't be the best person for that question.
Okay, and then we'll just take one more question here. It's from Vicky Keeble. She asks, how did you calculate the figure of 2% of freight in Paris is innovative? And are there similar statistics for other cities, for example, London?
I don't think there are. We could calculate them. I did the calculation myself for Paris. So I knew there were 800,000 deliveries a day, right, in the whole region. And I knew all of the city logistics innovations when I made the calculation. I knew, well, let's say most of them. So I asked them how many deliveries they were representing, how many, or if I didn't get the data from the operators, I could just guess from the number of vehicles they could use. For example, a very small startup company called the Green Link, I knew had made 500 deliveries a day, right? So I added up all the different results from all these different new companies doing innovative logistic services. And I came up with a number, and I, of course, made the comparison between the total number and the number of actual results from the actual companies in city logistics. And I came up with 2%.
Okay.
I could do the math again. It was 2 years ago, so I could do the math again, and I think it will be higher. It won't be double, but it will be higher. So it's making progress, and rather rapidly. But let's not forget that it's still marginal.
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty optimistic note to end the webinar on. Now that we've reached 4 p.m., thank you very much to Laetitia Dablanc. I'll just, I have a few more slides here, so if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. I've put up my email, our contact information here. Also, all presentations will be made available on the Solutions website. That's urban-mobility-solutions.eu. And also, this recording will be made available on our YouTube channel so that you can watch it at any time. So if you happen to have any sound issues on your end, then you can just go back and replay. So thank you very much, everybody, and we wish you a pleasant rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Kristen, and all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.